Hi everyone, today we're going to be studying rules, tables, and graphs. This is the first part of what will become a few-day lesson. Our learning targets for today are, I can use data from tables to create graphs, and I can read graphs to find data. Okay, we're going to be studying rates. Rates are something that describe the relationship between two different quantities. For example, miles per hour. Miles is one quantity, hour is another. Inches per foot. Inches is one quantity, feet are another. Price per pound. Can you think of any others? We have a few ways that we can represent rates. One way that we can represent rates is by using a graph. Another way that we can represent a rate is with a table. And a third way we can represent a rate is with a rule. Okay, let's look first at the table. This looks like an in and out table, which is something that you've been pretty familiar with over the years, where we can represent hours and miles. So 0 hours would be 0 miles. If a car is traveling at 30 miles per hour, in 1 hour, it will travel 30 miles. In 2 hours, it will travel 60 miles. In 3 hours, how many miles would it travel? You got it, 90 miles. So we could use a rule to represent these numbers. Can you think of what the rule would be? If you said that hours times 30 is the rule, you got it right on. We could actually even represent that as with a variable, like 30 times h. So that makes it pretty easy to figure out what 4 would be. 4 hours would then be 120 miles. The third way that we can represent this data is by using a graph. We always want to have the time on the bottom, and distance for this example is going to be going up. So you can see I've labeled the graph, and the way that we read this is by going over to a certain time and then going up and across to see how far the car has traveled. So let's say that we wanted to know an hour and a half. I need to go halfway between 1 and 2 hours, and halfway is right here, and then I'll go up and I'm going to see where the line meets, and then I'll go over to read that distance. So that's halfway between 30 and 60. So an hour and a half is going to be 45 miles. And then I can check that with my rule too. Does 1.5 times 30 equal 45? Sure does. Here's another example. Let's say that a 5th grader can read about 150 words in 1 minute. We can represent this in a table. If a 5th grader can read 150 words in 1 minute, how many can a 5th grader read in 2 minutes? 300. That's right. So then in 3 minutes, a 5th grader could read about 450 words. How many minutes would it take to read 750 words? That would take about 5 minutes. We can also represent this using a graph. When I use a graph, I want to go over to 1 minute and then up to 150. And I'm going to mark a point on 150. And then I can go up to 2 and mark a point at 300. And then I can connect those using a line. And you'll have to excuse me because the line is going to take me just a minute to draw. and we can extend that line. We want to make sure that our line is connected with a straight edge and connects all the points. And then finally, we can use a formula to represent that number. So we would want to multiply 150 times m, and I used m for minutes. In algebra, we don't have to use the multiplication symbol. We can just say 150 and then the letter m. And we just know that that means multiplication, 150m. Here are your 2 quiz questions for today. Rates can be represented using 3 ways: tables, graphs, or formula. Which one do you think is most accurate and why? And which one do you think is easiest to understand and why? Thanks for watching and have a wonderful night.